Hi, this is Allison Sheridan, and welcome to another edition of Screencasts Online. Taking screenshots is an invaluable way to help show someone else how to do something, or to send to a developer to show where there's a problem in their application, or maybe just to explain a question you have. Luckily, the Mac has a built-in screenshot app called Grab, or you can use different key combinations to take screenshots depending on the type of shot you want. But if you want to do more than grab part or all of the screen, you're going to want something more. What if you want to annotate the screenshot? Or what if you need a timed screenshot? Or what about video to explain something? Well, I'm a fanatic about screenshot apps, and I've tried dozens of them. And Monosnap from Monosnap.com is head and shoulders above the rest. Monosnap is more than a screenshot app, so let's take a look at all it can do.